standing as you're able for the reading of the gospel this morning. The gospel lesson today comes from Mark chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. Jesus speaks with authority to an unclean spirit. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at Jesus' teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue someone with an unclean spirit who cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked the spirit, saying, "Be silent and come out." And the unclean spirit, convulsing the person and crying with a loud voice, "I came out." And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching? With authority Jesus commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey." And at once Jesus' fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. May God add understanding to the reading of this gospel.
Would you join me in singing the Gloria? Glory be to the Maker, and to the Christ, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Amen.
You may be seated. After hearing that gospel, I bet some of you are thinking I'm talking about a coming out story, huh? God, I thank you for allowing me to be here today, to be your instrument and a vessel. Anoint my heart, anoint my lips, and let my words that I speak be your words, not just from me. And anoint the ears of those who would hear, that they would hear what you have for them on their faith journey today. Amen. Unclean spirits or unworthy followers. From the Gospel of Mark this morning, we're told again of an act of Jesus cleansing a person of an unclean spirit. A story of a person perceived to be demon-possessed. The Bible is full of many of these stories of the unclean and the possessed. In the time of Jesus, there was no shortage of sorcerers or self-proclaimed prophets to heal those with unclean spirits, the unclean, unworthy people. But Jesus did it with a flair. Jesus had to be flamboyant about it. Jesus did something different. He spoke directly to the Spirit. We really have no real understanding of what all these unclean spirits really were. There's no scientific proof for us to analyze. The American Psychiatric Association wasn't around to tell us what their diagnosis was. So we just really don't know what was going on with these people. For all we know, the person in the gospel lesson this morning perhaps just wanted to start screaming at Jesus to take the attention away from Jesus and give it to themselves. That happens in church. Too often. Let us also keep in mind that many things were deemed as unclean and would prevent you from the relationship with the Messiah. Even Mary, the mother of Jesus, after giving birth to Jesus, was not allowed into the temple for a period of several weeks. so that she could complete the religious directions for bringing Jesus to the temple for full acceptance. She was unclean and unworthy of going into the temple because a woman who had a male child pass through her birth canal was considered unclean for many weeks. We could go through all the rules in the Bible, both Old and New Testament alike, and find some very odd things that were deemed as unclean. We can look around our society today and find some very odd things that are deemed unclean. I'm looking around the room. I see an awful lot of uncleanliness here. For me, what all this really means is that the hierarchy of the church had found a way to proclaim someone which they viewed as unworthy to be unclean, and separated them for the love and the grace given freely for each of us. That truly is the unclean spirit. Jesus was being used by God to dramatically call out those so-called unclean spirits, to allow them to be in full community with all of those around them, showing that even the most unclean of those around us are worthy of the true salvation, and that same salvation and hope that Jesus' message was meant to bring forth. We need not look way back to the collection of the books of the Bible to find relevant stories of what others claim is unclean or unworthy. Being a high school student, a young boy in PE class, and you see your coach walk by and you think, ooh, you got pretty legs. That's unclean! Unworthy! Yeah, that little Girl Scout girl selling those cookies. I bet that's what you were doing, girl. Unclean! Unworthy! We also have no real need to look for a new prophet or a new Messiah to bring us the cleansing power. God still uses people to help us when we recognize an unclean spirit. But the unclean spirit, most of the time, is within us and not with them. When we find ourselves facing depression and or anxiety, God is using the skilled psychiatrists and counselors to help us find our center balance again. That's God calling out that unclean, uncomfortable spirit within. When we find ourselves with a disease or an ailment, God is still using the skills of great physicians and nurses and numerous technicians to help bring our bodies back to full strength. If you want a cure, then you have to look within and find that you need to be cured. It's not just going to happen for you. Look at our homeless community. We often see someone standing on a street corner begging for funds to help them get by. Perhaps holding a sign that says, "Anything helps, God bless you." How often is our reaction deep down inside for us to say, "Get a job"? Maybe they can't. Maybe they have had, and most of them do have, an underlying mental illness or condition that prevents them. More times than not, a condition that has probably gone ignored by professionals or the person themselves. Yet our society classifies them as unclean and unworthy of the fullness of life. After all, we're in Fayetteville, Build them a campsite. They'll be fine. Put up a tent. It doesn't matter if it gets cold. They'll find a way. Oh, just buy them socks. That'll cure them. Socks will heal you every time, won't it, Debbie? May work you to death, but it'll cure you. We need, as a society, more importantly, as a people of faith, help them find a way to see what the underlying issues are all about. Not long ago, Roy and I got to chat with a board member at Seven Hills. Roy asked, how's the little camp thing going? You know, there was this big thing about they were going to build a little camp village, corral them all in there, put a little fence around it so that we don't have to see them on MLK. He kind of chuckled and he said, you know, people have good intentions. But unless you take care of the underlying issues, there's no cure. We have to be doing something more. It is not okay for us just to have good intentions. We must have good actions when it comes to taking care of our brothers and sisters. If we as a society want to ignore people that are less than, or that we deem as unworthy, then we must call it what it is to its face, and face the fact that we just simply deem them and judge them as unworthy. Unworthy because they do not meet our standards of what is good, just, and right. Perhaps the one with the unclean spirit is not the one we see standing on a street corner, but the unclean spirit resides within us. Jesus is still in the healing business and is inviting each of us to be part of the healing process. For all those we meet, and more importantly, for ourselves. We may not be as fabulous as Jesus was, but whatever we can do to help others find their worth, then it's worth doing. I want to share with you a part of a blog from the Phillips Theological Seminary. Those who are sick today, who might be considered unclean or unwanted because of their gender identity or who they love, also come to healthcare providers in trust and with courage, believing they too are worthy of their humanity and thus of being made well and whole. Let us hope and pray that any healthcare provider, and especially those who heal under the name of Christian, would emulate the unconditional nature of Jesus and heal all in need. No conditions, no consequences, no caveats. Jesus never refused to heal anyone. We are the healthcare people. We are the ones that can call that spirit out and look at them and say, you're worthy of the fullness of the grace and love of Jesus Christ. Take my hand. If you fall, I'll fall with you, but we'll get up together. We're all worthy. Let each of us also claim that same mantle and belief, that though some may seem unclean, they really are worthy. Let us each love, heal, and hold each person with no conditions, no consequences, and no caveats, just as Jesus did. We are being called to do today. Amen.
Amen.